A few years ago, I worked the night shift at a distribution warehouse on the outskirts of the city. The building operated 24 hours a day. During the day, it was crowded with forklifts, drivers, supervisors, and delivery crews. At night, however, everything changed. Only a handful of workers remained. Most of the warehouse sat in complete silence. I actually enjoyed the job. The pay was decent, the work was easy, and the quiet made the nights pass quickly. At least that's how it felt during my first few months.
Then something happened that completely changed the way I looked at night shifts. My job was simple. Incoming trucks arrived throughout the night. I checked paperwork, opened loading bays, and directed drivers to the correct docks. Most nights followed the exact same routine. The drivers arrived, we unloaded the shipment, they left. Nothing unusual. One rainy Thursday night, I was working alone in the shipping office. The clock read 2:17 a.m. Outside, heavy rain hammered the roof. Visibility was terrible. I remember checking the delivery schedule and noticing something strange.
There was only one truck left for the night, a scheduled delivery arriving at Dock 7. The truck was supposed to arrive at 2:30. At exactly 2:28, headlights appeared through the rain. A large truck slowly entered the yard. Everything seemed normal. At first, the vehicle stopped beside Dock 7. I grabbed the paperwork and walked outside. The rain was freezing. When I reached the truck, something felt wrong immediately. The engine was running, the headlights were on, but the driver's seat was empty. I stared through the window. Nobody inside. I walked around the truck. Nothing. No driver. No passenger. Nobody. At first, I assumed the driver had gone inside the warehouse looking for shelter from the rain. It happened occasionally. I returned to the office and checked the cameras. No one had entered the building. I checked the parking lot. Empty. The loading yard? Empty. The truck remained parked at Dock 7. Engine still running. Driver still missing. After about 10 minutes, I called my supervisor. He told me to wait. Eventually, a replacement driver arrived from another facility. When he inspected the truck, he looked confused. The trailer was completely empty. No cargo, no paperwork, nothing. The vehicle itself belonged to a transport company, but nobody could explain why it had arrived or where the original driver had gone. The company later claimed none of their trucks were scheduled to be at our warehouse that night. The entire incident was written off as a clerical error. Most people forgot about it. I couldn't. Something about that empty truck bothered me. 2 weeks later, it happened again. Same dock, same time, different truck. This time, I watched it arrive on camera. The truck entered the yard, parked perfectly, and stopped. When I went outside, the cab was empty. Again, no driver, no explanation. That was when I started reviewing security footage. What I found made my stomach drop. Every time one of these trucks appeared, they entered from the same road, a service road that had been permanently closed for years. The gate leading to it was locked, chained shut. According to the cameras, no vehicle should have been able to enter from that direction. Yet somehow they did. And every appearance occurred between 2 a.m. and 3 a.m. Always during my shift. Always when I was alone. The third incident was the worst. Around 2:40 a.m., another truck arrived, but this time the driver's door slowly opened. I watched through the office window. Someone climbed down from the cab, a tall figure wearing a reflective jacket. For a moment, I felt relieved. Finally, a real driver, a real explanation. The figure began walking toward the warehouse. The yard lights illuminated him briefly. Something looked wrong. His movements were strange.
slow, unnatural, almost mechanical. Then he disappeared into a blind spot between two trailers. I immediately went outside. The rain had stopped. The yard was silent. I searched every loading bay. Nothing. The figure had vanished. The truck remained parked exactly where I had seen it. When I opened the driver's door, I froze. The seat was covered in dust. Not ordinary dust, a thick layer, as if nobody had sat there for years. Yet I had just watched someone climb out. That's when I noticed something else, an old identification card lying on the floor. The photograph was faded. The plastic was cracked. The expiration date showed it was nearly 15 years old. The employee pictured on the card had died years earlier. I knew because his story was well known among longtime workers. He had been involved in a fatal highway accident while making a late-night delivery. The location of the accident? The same road where those trucks kept appearing. The closed service road. The one no vehicle should have been able to use. After that night, I started dreading every shift. Every time the clock approached 2 a.m., I found myself staring at the cameras, waiting, watching, wondering if another truck would arrive. Most nights, nothing happened. Then one night, months later, I heard a knock on the office window. 3 sharp knocks. I nearly jumped out of my chair. Nobody should have been outside. The loading yard was empty. I checked the monitor. Nothing. Then another knock. This time directly behind me. I turned around. The office door stood open. The hallway beyond was dark, empty. But on my desk sat a delivery manifest. A single sheet of paper. Fresh. Dry. As though someone had placed it there moments earlier. At the top was a delivery number, a truck assignment, Dock 7, arrival time 2:30 a.m., driver name, blank. No name, no company, nothing, just an empty space. I quit that job 3 weeks later. To this day, I don't know what those trucks were, or who kept arriving at Dock 7. But every former employee I've spoken to remembers the same thing. If you worked the night shift long enough, eventually a truck would arrive with nobody inside. And somehow it always knew exactly where to park. Story 2. The Empty Hospital Corridor. For almost a year, I worked the night shift as a receptionist in a small regional hospital. The hospital wasn't large, only 3 floors, a small emergency department, several patient wards, and one older wing that had been mostly abandoned after renovations. Most nights were quiet. Patients came and went. Doctors completed paperwork. Nurses moved between rooms. Nothing unusual. At least until I started hearing about Corridor C. Corridor C was located in the oldest part of the building. The wing had once been used for long-term patients. After renovations, most of the rooms were emptied and locked. Only maintenance staff occasionally entered the area. Because of this, the corridor remained dark at night. Almost nobody went there. One evening, a nurse mentioned hearing footsteps in the corridor around 3 a.m. Nobody took her seriously. Old hospitals make strange noises. Pipes expand, doors settle, sounds travel. Everyone assumed there was a logical explanation. A few nights later, another nurse reported the same thing. Footsteps. Slow footsteps. Walking the entire length of Corridor C. Management checked the area. Nothing was found. The reports continued. Sometimes nurses claimed they saw movement near the end of the hallway. Sometimes they heard doors opening. Sometimes they heard voices. Every report occurred during the night shift, always after midnight. I didn't believe any of it. Until one night. Around 2:45 a.m., I left the front desk to deliver paperwork to a supervisor. The shortest route passed near Corridor C. As I approached, I noticed something unusual. The hallway lights were on. That wasn't normal. They were always turned off. I assumed maintenance workers were inside. As I entered the corridor, I immediately felt uneasy. The place was silent. Too silent. Hospital corridors usually have background noise, machines, voices, movement. This hallway had none. I walked slowly. Halfway down the corridor, I noticed an open door, room C12. The room should have been locked. All rooms in that wing were locked, yet the door stood slightly open. I pushed it wider. The room was empty. Dust covered the floor. The bed had been removed years earlier. Nothing seemed unusual. Then I noticed footprints. Fresh footprints. Someone had recently walked through the dust. The footprints entered the room, but they never came back out. I stared at the floor for several seconds. The tracks simply ended. There was no second exit, no open window, no explanation. I reported the discovery. Maintenance inspected the room the next morning. By then, the footprints had somehow disappeared. The dust remained. The tracks were gone. A week later, something happened that everyone in the hospital still remembers. A patient called the nurses' station around 3:10 a.m. The patient sounded frightened. He claimed someone was standing outside his room. The nurse checked immediately. Nobody was there. 10 minutes later, another patient called, same complaint. A person standing in the hallway, watching, not moving. Again, nobody was found. Then a third patient called, this time from a completely different floor. The description was identical. A tall figure standing in the hallway, watching. The security cameras showed nothing unusual. No intruders, no visitors, no staff member matching the description. Nothing. By this point, many employees refused to walk near Corridor C alone. I still tried to stay rational. Then came the night I saw it myself. I was covering the front desk alone. Around 3 a.m., a maintenance alarm appeared on one of the hospital monitors. The alert originated from Corridor C. I grabbed a flashlight and headed upstairs. The lights were off again. The hallway stretched endlessly into darkness. As I walked forward, my flashlight illuminated dozens of closed doors. Everything appeared normal. Then I noticed someone standing at the far end. A person. Motionless. Tall. Wearing what looked like hospital clothing. I called out. No response. I walked closer. The figure remained still. For several seconds, I genuinely believed it was a patient. Then, the figure stepped backward. Not turned around, not walked away. Simply stepped backward into the darkness and disappeared. I ran to the end of the corridor. Nobody was there. Every room was locked. Every window sealed. The corridor was empty. When I returned to the nurses' station, one of the nurses looked terrified. She had just received a call from room C12, the abandoned room. The room that no longer contained a phone. The caller never spoke. Only breathing could be heard. Slow, steady breathing. The call lasted 23 seconds before disconnecting. The next morning, hospital management finally reviewed old records connected to Corridor C. What they discovered explained why older employees avoided discussing it. Years earlier, before the renovations, a patient had died unexpectedly in room C12. Nothing suspicious, nothing criminal, just a tragic medical emergency.
But according to several employees who worked there at the time, strange reports began shortly afterward. Footsteps, voices, a figure in the hallway. the exact same stories that continued years later. A few months after my experience, Corridor C was permanently sealed during another renovation project. Walls were installed, access doors removed. The hallway effectively ceased to exist. Strangely, the reports stopped immediately. No more footsteps, no more late-night calls, no more sightings. I still work in healthcare.
I still believe most strange events have logical explanations, but I have never been able to explain what I saw standing at the end of that corridor. And I still remember one detail that bothers me most. The figure wasn't looking at me. It was looking directly toward room C12, as if it had never left. Story 3. The voice on the security radio. Several years ago, I worked the night shift as a security guard in a 12-story office building. The building was located in the business district and remained mostly empty after 7 p.m. During the day, thousands of employees filled the offices. At night, only security personnel remained. Most nights were uneventful. I performed patrols, checked locked doors, monitored cameras, and waited for sunrise. The job was boring until the radio transmissions started. At first, they seemed harmless. Random static, occasional interference. Nothing unusual. Large buildings often caused radio problems. One night, around 2:11 a.m., I heard a voice through my radio. "Can anyone hear me?" The voice sounded weak, distorted. I assumed another guard was testing equipment. I responded. No answer.
A few seconds later, the voice returned. "This is security." Then static. The transmission ended. The strange part was that I was the only guard working that night. Nobody else should have been using a radio. I reported the issue. Management blamed faulty equipment. The incident was forgotten. Until it happened again. 3 nights later, same time, 2:11 a.m. The same voice, the same distortion. "Can anyone hear me?" This time I checked every floor. Nobody was there. The building was completely empty. When I returned to the security office, another transmission arrived. "Don't go upstairs." I froze. The message lasted less than 2 seconds. Then silence. At first I thought someone was playing a prank. But nobody had access to the building. The access logs confirmed it. No visitors. No employees. Nobody. Over the following weeks, the transmissions continued. Always after 2 a.m. Always brief. Always from an unidentified source. Some messages made no sense. Others were unsettling. Stay in the lobby. Leave now. Don't use elevator 3. Every transmission ended in static. One night, curiosity got the better of me. I decided to track the signal. Using maintenance equipment, I attempted to locate the source. The results confused everyone. The signal originated from floor 12, the top floor, an area that had been vacant for years. Most of the offices were abandoned. Nobody worked there anymore. The floor remained locked. The next night, I took the elevator to floor 12. The doors opened. Darkness. The motion lights activated one by one. The hallway stretched ahead. Empty. Silent. Every office was locked. Every room abandoned. Nothing unusual. Then my radio crackled. "You're here." The voice sounded clearer than ever. For the first time, it didn't sound distorted. It sounded human. Very human. I immediately responded. "Who is this?" No answer. Only static. I searched the entire floor. Nothing. No person. No radio equipment. No explanation.
Before leaving, I checked one final office near the end of the hallway. The room was empty except for an old desk. On top sat a security radio, covered in dust. The battery had long since died. The model was outdated, at least 15 years old. I brought it downstairs.
The next morning, I showed it to an older maintenance employee. His reaction surprised me. He immediately recognized the radio. It had belonged to a former security guard, a man named Eric. Years earlier, Eric worked the same building, the same shift, the same position. One winter night, he disappeared. No witnesses, no evidence, no explanation. Police searched the building. Nothing was found. The case remained unsolved. I couldn't stop thinking about it, especially after discovering one more detail. Eric disappeared during a night shift at exactly 2:11 a.m.
The same time the transmissions always occurred. After that, things became worse. The messages grew more specific. One night the voice said, "Someone is in the stairwell." I checked. Nobody. Another night, "Look behind you." I nearly jumped out of my chair. Nobody stood behind me. Then came the message that changed everything. Around 2:11 a.m., the radio activated. The voice sounded panicked, desperate, almost terrified. "You have to leave now." I asked why. For several seconds, there was only static. Then I heard something else. Footsteps, running footsteps, followed by a loud metallic crash. The transmission ended. Every security camera in the building briefly went offline. When they returned, one monitor showed movement on floor 12. A figure, standing at the end of the hallway, watching the camera. The image quality was terrible, but I could clearly see a person. I took the elevator upstairs. The hallway was empty. Again. But this time I found something. Fresh footprints, leading toward the old office where I had found Eric's radio. The door stood open. Inside the room, dust covered everything, except one area. The chair behind the desk. The dust had been disturbed, as if someone had been there recently, watching, waiting. That was enough for me. I returned downstairs. The following morning, I submitted my resignation. My final shift ended 1 week later. Nothing unusual happened during those last nights. No transmissions, no sightings, no strange messages. Everything stopped. Until my final night. At exactly 2:11 a.m., the radio activated one last time. The voice sounded calm, almost relieved. "Thank you." Then, silence. No static, no interference, nothing. I never heard the voice again. A few months later, the building was sold and renovated. Most of the old offices were demolished. The security office was relocated. The radio system was replaced. Whatever happened there remains unexplained. Maybe someone was secretly accessing the building. Maybe there was a technical malfunction. Maybe there is a logical explanation I never discovered. But one fact still bothers me. The maintenance employee later showed me a photograph of Eric, the missing security guard. On his belt was the same radio I had found upstairs. And when I looked at his face, I immediately recognized him, because he was the same figure I had seen standing at the end of the hallway on floor 12. Some night shifts are quiet, some are lonely, and some leave you wondering who was really talking to you through the radio all those years later.